Hey y'all, it's Mary Payne from Pink Shade. And if you're hearing this, that means I'm on vacation. Oh, so exciting. So, for this week, when I'm on vacation, I'm presenting a series to you called Then and Now. Then and Now. So, the then part is my Payne in the Pod days where I had a podcast about podcasters. And it was amazing. I loved it so much. Thinking about bringing a little Payne in the Pod back in the new year. Not as it was, but maybe just on the Pink Shade Prime, Patreon, and Supercast. Anyway, that's a side note. That's a programming note for 2024. So when you're hearing these episodes, you're going to hear me talk to Ryan Bailey, Kate Casey, and Matt and Jake from Reality Gaze. And what we're going to do is break down the original episode that I had with them from 2018, 2019, 2020. And then we will talk about what's going on now, what has changed, what stayed the same. So what you're going to hear is my current interview with either Kate, Ryan, or Matt and Jake. And then you afterwards stay tuned and you'll hear the original episode. So I hope you enjoyed this series. I'm thinking about kind of stringing this along now that I see some of the old interviews I have and how great they were. I'm like, hey, why not catch up with some of these people? So I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you in the new year. Hey y'all, welcome to Pink Shade. This is the Then and Now series that I've been telling you about. So you guys know I started Payne in the Pod in October of 2018. And if you're not familiar with that, I only interviewed podcasters about their podcasts. It was just podcasts that I loved. Some were true crime, some were reality. And really when I was listening to the old episodes, I thought, I'm going to die. I'm going to be cringing. It's going to be the worst. But I really have enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it. And so many of the people are my laugh and life, real life friends now. And one of those is my friend Kate Casey, who I talk to more than I talk to my own family. Hey, Kate.
Oh my God, this was torture.
You said that, and I didn't think it was torture at all. I think you sounded very serious,
I sounded very serious.
Way serious than you are in real life.
Well, then I was like, why did anybody talk to me? I was so serious.
You take your reality job.
Okay, but and I was like, Jesus, lighten up, girl. Yeah.
Oh my God. We first talked, I think that we recorded this in August of 2018 because my first 3 episodes came out on October 1st of 2018. So I was working with like a super professional producer, shout out Richard, at that time. And he was like, no, we're going to like bank them up and then we're going to learn. And I would go to the studio and I would sit in the room with him. Like it was like,
it was heavy duty. I remember you did that.
Real profesh.
Yeah.
And then when I started doing it at home, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And now I'm just like, beep, bop, boop. Here we go. hit create podcasts and put it out to the world.
Well, that's like when I was a dumbass and I was first with Wondery. I used to drive to LA every Tuesday after I dropped off the kids, which was south of me. And I would go and I would record. And then as soon as I was done at 12, Heather McDonald had her studio time and I would leave and drive back to go pick up the kids. And if I was in traffic, I was screwed. But I had believed in my head, like, oh, they want to see me. Like, I'm going to go to the studio. And then I realized like they were charging me for the time that I recorded.
Yep.
I was like, what am I doing? So then I started doing Zooms.
Yeah. And then they're charging you studio time. They're probably charging you producer time, everything.
Everything. I was so dumb. I didn't know any different.
I didn't either. I was paying so much money.
So stupid.
And then when I hooked up with Erin, when we were doing Hey Bunky, and then when we joined together on Pink Shade, she was like, no, you could just do it from your house. I was like, what?
I know, right?
I could do what from my house?
I'm like, I don't have to be stuck in traffic. You know, one time I had an interview with Brandy Redmond from Real Housewives of Dallas.
Yeah.
And I dropped the kids off at school. I'm almost all the way to LA. So, okay. So I would go south of my house for 25 minutes, drop the kids off. And now I'm adding 25 minutes onto, depending on traffic, and up to a 2-hour drive.
Yeah.
I'm all the way to LA. I check my email and it's an email from her publicist and said, oh, Brandy can't make it because she's under the weather. Or no. She had a meeting about her resort line. I'm not even kidding you. I was like, she can't. I said, do you understand? I have driven. Oh, I forgot. I also had a sick kid.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
on the way to school, I had to pull over the highway and Mia threw up out of the car, drop the other kids off. Then I had to drop her off on the way home, drop her off, and then go to LA. So I've lost my marbles. Like
Yes.
when you're like, I'm going to actually get out and kill somebody.
Yeah.
So I went insane. So then I called Heather and I'm like, this is what's happening. And she's like, let's go on social media. So I look up and Brandy had been at like bars the night before.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
I was like, are you fucking kidding me?
Uh-huh.
Like, there are other people in the world. I never got over it. Never got
Mhm.
over it. But I went insane on her publicist.
You should, and I recently had that happen to me. It worked out fine in the end, but I recently had an interview set up, and the PR person wrote me 30 minutes before and said, "They're having a hectic day. We'll just reschedule." And I was
Oh,
like,
like who's like, okay.
okay, my day has been completely calm, and guess what just got hectic? My day, because now
Right.
I don't have an episode for tomorrow."
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, having a hectic day is not an excuse.
Mm-mm.
It's showbiz, not show friends. Yeah.
Exactly.
And that is something I wanted to talk to you about. So you talked about so many things that have not changed in our business, which is like guests cancel last minute
Yep.
and guests that don't promote the episode.
Oh my God, still drives me insane.
I know it's really a sticking point for you. We talk about it a lot. And I'm always sort of like, hey, don't forget, don't forget. And so now on Instagram, there's something called collab. So you don't just tag the person and they can repost it, which sometimes is just good enough. But a collab, it shows up in their feed as if they
But
posted
a lot
it.
of people won't do it.
A lot of people won't do it. So the girl that helps with social media, sometimes she's like, ask them if they'll do the collab. So if they say yes, then I'll do it. Otherwise, she was like, don't even bother. Because sometimes I've hit collab and I'm like, great. And she's like, I'm going to tell you, don't hit collab if you haven't asked them. Because number one, they may not see it. And number two, they may not want your post showing up in their feed if they don't repost. I was like, this is too confusing.
Yeah, I know.
If
I
you
know.
hit collab, it just
Mm-hmm.
seems easy. But because it would say like in collab with Pink Shade Pod, maybe somebody doesn't want that.
Well,
Just
I kind of
wild.
like, but now I've been on the other side of, I might still like get fired up about it, but I did an episode once where they asked me a question and the clip that they put up makes it sound like I'm berating Andy Cohen for the way he hosts reunions. And it didn't lay out that way, but it
Uh-huh.
made it seem like that. And they wanted me to promote it. And I was like, I'm not promoting something where like I'm already always frustrated about the way
Mhm.
that I get treated by that network. And now, like, you want me to promote that? Like, you're insane. I've noticed it's best if you ask the guests, like, can you send me your favorite picture?
Uh-huh.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, yeah,
or
yeah.
like I find a clip that I think is super flattering to them.
Right. Yes, I was just listening today to an episode I did with Brandy and Julie, who are always funny, and every clip is going to be funny that they say. But I'm also trying to find it so where we all three sound funny, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
not just them sounding funny. I sound a little funny too, which is hard because they're professional funny people. So it is the social media thing is really, and I'm always out here like whoring myself out trying to get another Instagram follower, but it is so hard. And what I try to explain too to the listeners is it is actually important to have a good social media following, because if ad campaigns look at you or something and they want you
Yeah,
to include a social media post, I'm always like, I'll do whatever. I'll stand in the kitchen and make whatever. Like
totally.
I'll do anything. I'll do it. But if they look and they go, oh well, she has just under
X
eight
amount.
10,000 followers, then who cares? And
Mm-hmm.
then you don't get the ad.
I hate to tell you,
Yeah.
they don't care underneath 100,000
Well,
followers.
then I am fucked.
Yeah. No, I
Because
mean, that's why people lie and cheat and steal and like fake it till they make it because
they buy followers.
unfortunately
Yeah.
that's the currency that we're living in. People, that's why people go on reality shows too. Is like they're trying to be an actor or a host or whatever and they
Yeah.
need a big bump. You go on a reality show, you get by the way, you don't get the bump that you used to. Like The
Hmm.
Bachelor back in the day, you were like guaranteed 800 to a million followers. It's just
Yeah.
not that way anymore. It's just saturated, just like podcasts.
I will tell you who did do the collab was Chantel of Family Chantel and Pedro. And she has a
Oh,
million followers on
does she really?
Instagram. She has a 1,000,000, and I, because they're on that show for a long time. They've been on since
Yeah.
season 4. I mean, and now we're in season 10,
Wait, but are
and
they, like, married still?
they are now currently divorced.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, they
Um,
sounded like they or seemed like they would never work out.
this Family Chantel, this last season 5, which was only 6 episodes, was just completely about their divorce and the closure, and now she's on the single life. So, but she was like, yeah, and like she gave me her phone number and was like, just text me. And so I did. I was like,
Okay, that's
oh, I was like,
crazy unusual and awesome.
and I was like, can I just, would you mind? And she was
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, I'll hit the collab. And she did,
Wow, awesome.
which I think I got 100 more followers. But I
Props
mean,
to you, Chantel.
I'll take those 100
Well done,
followers from
friend.
Chantel. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is funny that,
And by the way, sometimes the collab, my own friends won't do it. My own
listen,
friends.
if you ever asked me to
And
do
by
a
the way,
collab, I'd pee my
episodes that are
pants.
about them.
That make them look good. Yeah.
Like a whole episode about them. They don't do the collab.
And you don't understand. You're like,
No, I don't. And
do you have a
I
PR person I can contact? Would that person do it? Yeah.
yeah.
It is funny things that
You
have
know what I
changed
do
and
when I
stayed
get
the
really
same.
mad?
What?
You know what do when I get really mad? I
I'd
call
love to
you.
know.
I call you. I call you
was
and I
about to say,
complain.
you guys, minimum once a week. Minimum. I get a call from Kate. And sometimes it'll just be a voicemail like, oh, I have something to tell you. Just call me back. Because
what
a lot of
though?
things you don't want it written out. It's better
No,
just
no,
to
no,
it's
no.
better
And I
just
have
to
to
say it.
say, I was thinking about this yesterday on the long ride to the high school to pick up Mia. I think that it is really important for people to be able to have a space where you vent, and everybody needs I'm the archetype friend where like I'm a good person to vent to
Mhm.
because it stays in the vault. I
Yes.
never repeat what people say.
Yes.
And I'm really good with like you vent it, then we like riff about it and then we let it go. I
Right.
would rather you do that than you sometimes confront somebody who is not at a place where they're going to give you what you need, that you might
Mhm.
put it in a text, put it in like some voicemail. I'd rather you call me and we talk it out and then it's gone. We let it
Yeah.
go. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and you and I do that quite a bit. And who knew when we talked in 2018 that this would be where we are?
Again, that episode, I was like, Jesus, lighten up, girl.
But we also talked on that episode about the podcast community being very supportive. And you were saying, yeah, sometimes I'll just jump on. Now, this was before like you and I were close friends, but so you were like dropping names. Like you're like, sometimes I get Ronnie just to come on to talk about 90 Day because he doesn't watch it, or somebody like Danny Pellegrino. And you were talking about that.
Oh,
And
by the way,
now,
I couldn't do that now because not that they wouldn't come on my show, but they would. I could never convince those guys to go watch a 90 Day Fiance because they're too busy now.
they're too busy.
That's changed too.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
if I text Danny or I text Ronnie, they'd be like, "Are you out of your mind? No way."
I don't have time for that.
No.
I don't have time for that.
But you know
And
what
is it
hasn't changed? I'll
what?
still watch whatever somebody sends me.
Yeah. Yeah. I just let you know that the Family Chantel is really good. But, like Love After Lockup, we talk about that show, and it's gotten so much of it, 80% of it, you can tell, they're playing it up for the camera or it's like staged, and none of these people are actors. These are people that are dating prisoners, right? They're
Crazy.
and so
Yeah.
they're not good actors, right? Like sometimes probably on the Housewives they have them redo things and maybe you wouldn't know. It's kind of seamless.
Mhm.
These people are not that sophisticated, so they'll be like, "Hey, I saw in the fridge you had some beer. Are you drinking again?
Oh boy.
Wow." And you're like,
Yeah, but
"Oh,
you know what?
Lord."
Real Housewives is like that right now. Beverly
Sometimes it
Hills.
can be. Can
The
be.
no, the way that they're like, "Oh," talking about Sutton potentially having eating issues and
Mhm.
alcoholism.
Mhm.
Like, what?
I think they decided it's her turn. That's what I think.
It's kinda evil.
I think they decided
Yeah,
it's
you're
time
right.
for us to take her down a peg.
Yeah.
But I will say that that whole scene, and by the time this episode comes out, we'll be a couple of episodes past it. But the scene with her firing up that joint at the table, first of all, is the rudest thing I've ever seen because now your house stinks. Like it's
Mhm.
so rude. But somebody was like, oh yeah, what she was trying to be like, oh, we're having a dinner party. I'm going to be like Alison Dubois throwback. And
Oh, wow, that's
we,
pretty Machiavellian. Wow.
And I never thought about that, but somebody
I didn't
said it.
think about it either.
I would give whoever credit if I could remember.
Credit to you. Yes.
Credit to whoever came up with that. Probably she did think, "Oh, we're gonna have this dinner party. I'm gonna do that," because she kept saying, "Kyle said I could. Kyle said I could." Because me, like beforehand, she was like, "I have a great idea, Kyle. I'll bring out a joint since it's a weed party, and it'll be like Alison Dubois, and because Faye is there and Camille is there, and
Mhm.
Camille was not
Wow.
used enough in that scene. I could have
No,
used
she wasn't.
more Camille,
More
less
cowbell,
Denise.
please. Yes, agreed.
Yeah, yeah. And Faye Resnick just down there like, I don't want to sit by that bitch. I was like, she don't want to sit by you either.
Yeah, sometimes she's great because she wants to go high when they go low, but at the same
Hmm.
time, I don't know. Actually, do we want her to talk? If you're not a cast member or a friend of maybe we don't want you to talk.
Yeah, I mean, Cynthia Bailey also underutilized.
I don't know if I really like this new trend on Beverly Hills to throw in other cast members of other franchises. Like last night, you could see Megan K. getting Edmonds in the back. I
Kate, I
also
thought I was
don't
the
want to see.
only one that saw that. I
I
thought I
don't
was the
like
only one
that.
that saw that. I was like, and they never even said Megan King Edmonds, friend of Sutton, underneath. They
I
never
like.
even did
I'm
it.
like, why are they doing that? And I also don't. No disrespect to anybody, but I just don't like to see people in the press and other podcasters in the back either. I feel like it's breaking a weird fourth wall. Trust me,
At that
I've been
party, I saw
invited to.
two people that I
I've
saw
been invited to
everywhere
stuff.
at
I
BravoCon.
never go. I've been invited to plenty. I don't go because, first of all, I prefer to watch it from the comfort of my couch. But for the audience, when they be like, why is Kate there? It makes it look like you want to be on the shows.
I'm going to put it out there. If you invite me to anything, I will go. But anything, I will show up. I will show up. I will
It's
show
not, but
up.
it's not what people think it is. Like they push you out. They don't want you on screen.
I don't wanna
They
be on
only want the
screen, I
cast
just wanna, like,
members.
look from the
You could,
side.
yeah, you could be in the side. Yeah, you could be in the bushes or something.
Yeah, I mean, Megan King Edmonds was literally looking from the side.
Okay, somebody wrote in one of the groups. I don't know which Facebook group maybe it's mine. I don't know, but I thought, ooh, that's a good theory. Maybe it was Heather's group. They said, why does Sutton have this store? Because it probably doesn't make any money. And then somebody put in the comments, I think that's the point.
Oh, yeah.
I went, oh
Yeah.
my God, that's brilliant too.
Yeah, I know
Brilliant meaning
somebody
a brilliant observation.
I
That's
I kn
another.
yeah, I know somebody who very purposefully every year would make sure their business was at 0. Yeah.
Interesting.
I'm gonna make all this money, but I'm going to have enough expenses
Mhm,
so that
mhm.
it's 0 even though I made 6 figures this year.
Which she likes to brag about, sure.
Yeah, that I so I do
And
I know
it's also a
somebody that did that
tax
as well.
write-off, right, for her to wear all the luxury because it's for the store.
Yeah, and it's for work. Yeah. I
Okay,
think
so
it's pretty
now,
smart.
like, I feel like the scale the scale
Now you think
always changes. Like, I'm like, "Oh god, I feel bad for Sutton." Then I'm like, "Ooh, she's diabolical." It's like, but I like that. I like a show like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't like I didn't like Kyle saying the thing about her eating and
I did
pushing her
not
food
like
from
that.
side to side
I didn't
because
like it.
you never know,
Mm-mm.
especially with Crystal being there and her history. I was like,
But you know what? But that same token, you know what I didn't like either? Did you
"What?
see the Miami episode where Lisa's with her kids and she's distracted with all the divorce things and the pizza?
Kate?" Again, I thought I was the only person that noticed that, and who did I say it to? I can't remember who I said it to, but I said, "Did nobody pick up on how fucked up that is?"
That
And
was
maybe
awful,
okay,
appalling.
appalling to so what happened, guys, if you didn't see it? So it's Lisa Hochstein, Real Housewives of Miami. She's fit and gorgeous and, whatever, So she has 2 kids, a son and a daughter, and the son maybe is 6, the daughter's maybe 4.
Yeah, they're little.
They're
Little
little.
kids.
And she says, "Okay, fun, like it's pizza night." So she just slaps some pizza boxes on the
But she
table.
said it's a cheat night,
It's a cheat night
which
and
is weird for little
special
kids.
occasion. And she slaps pizza boxes on the table as, we've all done. But once the little boy is talking about how good the pizza is, he's like, I'm so excited. Like we didn't have to have a kale salad for dinner. This is great.
Yeah,
And she shuts the pizza box and goes, "No more. You can't have any more."
it's
And
awful.
then she jokingly later says that the little boy said, "Oh, we're going to get ice cream. It's a cheat day." He's 6 years old.
6 years old. That was awful.
when she was like, "No more. You can't have any more. No, no,
Well, you know what
it's bad for
happens?
you." I was
You
like,
know what
"You
happens in
gave
the
it to
next
him."
episode? The next episode, they're gonna talk about, like, a couple of them are going to do, like, some sort of intervention where they're gonna say that they don't really think she's a great parent, like, a present parent.
What? That's gonna happen on the show?
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen
Well,
that.
think about it, all these scenes too, it's like all she's talking about is Lenny, even with the boyfriend.
It's awful.
It's awful.
Yeah. I, heard a story about the boyfriend that I maybe shouldn't say.
Is that why, like, I just don't know why he's putting up with this.
I don't either
Yeah,
because
maybe he wants to be on TV, because what normal person would withstand that?
yeah, he I don't know, and I really thought it was interesting the episode where they were all sitting around and they were like, "You need to quit, like, he's right there," and she's like, "He's so supportive, he just" I was like, "Is he your buddy or is he your love interest? Because your buddy
Mhm.
would be fine with you bitching about it all the time,
Yep.
but your love interest probably doesn't wanna hear about it nonstop,
But
nonstop."
but also Lenny's fiance talks about it nonstop too, but she's got ulterior motive. She wants to be like a famous person.
Oh god, that girl. That girl. Are they even divorced, the Hoxians?
I don't think
Probably
so.
not. Because I
Mm-mm.
know that I saw that Kenya Moore finally got divorced. So
Oh, wait.
yeah.
Sorry. What it let Did you see the video of Croy outside of his house freaking out
Okay,
about
let me tell
Kim?
you what I just saw, um, 5 minutes ago before we jumped on was Bethany talking about a video she just saw with Kim and Croy,
Oh,
and
okay,
she
same
was
one.
and
Uh-huh.
Bethany generally just, like, bug and I swipe, but this was actually pretty powerful in that she
Oh,
was
okay.
saying it really triggered her because growing up, she had a mother and a stepfather
That fought all the
that
time.
and she called the cops on them all the time. Then she would be
Mm.
taken to someone's house, and then finally her parents would be able to get her back, and they would get her back, and then she would hear them having sex.
Oh, that okay. Wow, that's pretty powerful.
And
Mm.
she's like, "So I couldn't understand." She was saying, like, "The
Mm.
house was in so chaotic, but my room was perfect, because if I could get in my room, everything was perfect in there." And that also is a little bit of an insight into
But I
how
mean,
she is in life.
that is important for her to do stuff like that, because I do think the more we learn about someone's personal story, those things do make sense.
Her talking about it really because everybody's kind of on Bethany right now because she is so seemingly unhinged on social media and all this. But this was like, I don't know her. I would never DM her, whatever. But it did to me seem like, okay, we're actually learning something about you that we didn't know. She was like, one day there'd be 6 Mercedes in the driveway, and the next day the cops would come and take all
She
the
has
cars
said that
away.
before. She has said that before.
Yeah. But the
Yeah, it
thing
sounds
about the
like
parents being
yeah,
abusive.
yeah.
So tell me about the video of Kim McCoy because I was like, what's she talking about?
Okay, so the cops, with the headgear on or whatever,
They're constantly at their house.
they
Yeah.
show up and Croy is in the driveway and he's just screaming, and they're like, he's like, "Why are you here?" And they're like, "Well, they're asking like, "What's going on?" And he's like, "What's going on? Our life is destroyed. We have no money." He goes, "She's fucking other men. This is
Mhm.
Our lives are destroyed. Do you get it? She's a narcissist.
Mhm.
Everything is lies." And then the
Mhm.
officer's like, "Okay, but your kids called the police. Like somebody," and he's like, "What?" And he's just screaming and yelling outside. He's like, "The house is gone. Like everything's gone. She's fucking other men." And then yeah, the police officer going, "Okay, but like one of your kids called the police."
And those kids are what, like 12 and 10?
Oh,
And
and he
they
go no, and he did say something like, "And then she'll want to be together tomorrow." So it
right.
does sound like exactly what Bethany was saying.
Yeah, because
But
that
it's so
is
dark. It's just like, but also it's hard too because you're like, you didn't see this coming, guy.
yeah, but you
Like, look at
can't
her life. She has
yeah,
look what she did to her parents at your wedding. Like,
I know, but if you reverse that man to woman, you wouldn't say that. Do you know what I mean? You wouldn't say, "Couldn't you see it coming?" It's sorta like blame the victim. They're 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 both at fault
I
100%.
yeah, but you know what? Maybe if they were like civilians out in the world,
Mhm.
but this is on television and they both wanted fame.
Yes.
He met her at an event where he was like Dancing with the Stars as a football player.
Dancing with the Stars
Like a
Atlanta.
lot of victims, they don't have the luxury of watching things play out on television where you're confronted by it. Not just your own visual experience, but all these people in the orbit telling you, look, 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 look. They
Mhm.
don't have the luxury that you've had.
Right.
You had the luxury of people witnessing the woman you're about to marry on television, her behavior. You could watch it for yourself,
Yeah.
and you did not pay attention.
Yeah.
People show you who they are, Maya Angelou said.
But
Believe them.
I think that after the first time they separated, they should have stayed separated. But the getting back together and the constant of they're like, it's like Keisha
Well, we don't
says, like,
like, how do you
they
trust
should
it?
be
I
they
I
should be
feel like
charged $100 every time somebody from that house calls the cops at this point because it's nonstop.
well, if it's the children, I don't know if we can do that,
No,
but
no, I no, but you know what
yeah,
I mean. They're calling the cops on each
on
other.
each other. Yeah. No, I
Yeah,
also think
they should be allowed to have those kids in the house if the kids have called 911 on them more than once.
yeah, true. I also think it's hard with because these 2 flip-flop so much, you don't know how much is, like, like, they're trying to get a TV show.
Well, that I think is a part of it. Of people are like put the cameras up,
So
follow them around.
so I don't know if
Yeah,
they're typical victims, you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, yeah. But I'm saying everybody, me too, you too. We're like, but where are the cameras? I mean, I've heard you talk to Carlos King, and when I
Mhm.
spoke to him, I was like, put the cameras up. Like, why aren't we watching this? Isn't that what they want? Isn't that what they want? Is to
That's
be,
what they do want.
yeah.
They want us to pay attention, they want a paycheck.
But when it gets into
Kids.
the kids
It's
and the cops
horrible.
showing up and all that, that's when you get into
It's
this is
dark.
really dark and bad. And
Mhm.
while we are enjoying this like crazy of the two of them, when you think of they have these little kids in the house, not their kids that are out. I don't know, maybe if Brielle and Ariana live there.
I'm sure they live there.
Um,
I feel like they would live in a car with their mother. She's
yeah,
created a situation where they're so codependent. The older
yeah,
kids. I don't know about the
yeah,
younger ones.
yeah. Is her name Ariella? Ariana? Brielle and Ariana?
Ariana.
Ariana. Um, okay, back to what we're supposed to be talking about, which is the podcast. So we talked about being supportive. So, okay, what was interesting, okay, about this episode that I listened to back that I in 2018 from when I first was really meeting you,
Mhm.
when you were very serious.
Very serious.
Very serious. I realized that was my first time I dipped my toe into 90 Day Fiance. Because
Wow.
I said it on the episode. I go, yeah, I just started watching 90 Day Fiance.
Wow.
Isn't that wild? Because now
That's
you
all
can't you
that's,
can't
like,
ask me a detail. I don't.
synonymous. Yeah, like, you know every detail. You go to the events, like, you're in it to win it. Yeah.
I'm in it to win it. We did a
I've gone the opposite, where I was very into it the first season, and then it just plummeted.
the first season is the only season I haven't watched.
Oh, wow.
I've seen the Where Are They Now and the snippets,
Yeah.
but I never saw the whole season. And I think it was because it was very normal at the time and it went real cuckoo in season 2.
Yeah. But to this day, Yamir is still my favorite, and, I tracked him down with the help of Les Kirkendall. That story was actually my favorite of all
I know
time.
that he was the guy that was like the pop star
Correct.
in what country was
Nicaragua.
okay, if that's where it was,
Yeah.
Nicaragua, and then he met an American girl and it's like
Uh-huh.
gave up his pop star. It's like leaving Menudo or something.
No, it was, and the band manager was like, "How could you do this?" Like, to the girl, like,
And
"You're
what's
you're
he doing
you're
now? Do we
breaking the
know
grand up."
they're divorced?
So they're divorced, and he lives in Los Angeles, and he still makes music, and he's
Mm,
a wonderful person. Because
so
Les
interesting.
Kirkendall was like, "I am working on the set of," because Les is an actor. He said, "I'm working on the set of something, and you're not gonna believe who's with me." I went, "I don't know." He goes, "Yamir." I go, "I am dying," because he knew I was obsessed with that story. So
Yeah,
I interviewed him, caught
I
up with
remember
him.
that. I
Yeah,
remember
he's
we it
so
was
sweet. He's such a
it
nice
was
guy.
it was like this year you interviewed
Yeah,
him, right? Yeah.
yeah. And by the
And we
way, you gotta watch him on social media. He, like, makes beautiful music. In the interview, I asked him to sing to me, which he did. He's so sweet. He always checks in, and he's a really, really nice person.
yeah. Listen, if you get Kate Casey on your side, you could go places.
Well, I don't know, but hope so.
Well, we also talked about our love of the first season of The Real World. And I mean,
Oh,
I'm older than you, so when I watched it, they're my exact same age.
mhm.
Like Julie is my same age. And so I really related with her being like a girl from the South moving to a big city because I was
Yeah,
coming from my Mississippi bubble to DC. So I really related with her. And
yeah.
all of the do you remember you and I were like, "Oh, yeah, it was Norm, it was Julie, we were naming we
Yeah.
could not remember the name of Becky."
Oh, really?
We were like,
Well,
"What was her name?"
I always felt like she was like an invader. Like she felt like she was too cool for the experience.
Yeah, and then when they did that, reunion, when they stayed there for, like,
Mhm.
3 nights or whatever they did,
Yep, in New York.
um, she acted awful and left.
She was awful.
She was awful, and then she
Mhm.
left. Yeah, I reached out to Julie on social media at that time. I was like, "I can't tell you how much it would mean for me if you came on the podcast." I explained, like, just what I just said about how much the show meant to me, and now that's, like, what I do for my job, and I would love to do it. Reach out to this person. She gave me the name, and then, of course,
I
crickets.
hate it when they say that. I get that all the time. Reach out to you can't just come on like you're really bound by the truth is what people need to understand is there's like the network tells these the talent like you everything has to go through us, but
You're right.
those people never get messages to us or to the talent. Like
Yeah.
they put up a wall so we get frustrated and then you don't follow the rules and you go directly to the talent or their personal publicist and then the network gets mad at you and then they cut you off.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds like you're speaking from experience, Kate.
I like the other day I was like I can't believe I've been in this game for how long and I still have to go, can I please interview blah 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 from this show that no one watches, and then I get
Yeah.
rejected. I'm like
Yeah.
like I've made no strides in all these years.
Sometimes I'll reach out to the most random people because I'm like, I just love them on Pillow Talk or whatever. And then I think that people are like, really? You want to talk to them? I'm like, I do. It's
Mhm.
great. Because I'm like, I could tell that they would be fun to talk to, and they are.
Yeah.
But what happened recently? I had this great interview with Olivia Plath, and her PR team was like, "Yeah, we'll get back to you," and back and forth. And then I just reached out to her directly, and when I opened up my
Mhm.
DM her, I realized she and I already had like a DM relationship that I'd kind of forgotten about from last year, where she went
Mhm.
back and forth with me. So when I DM'd her, she wrote me back right away. I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, there was a snafu. Let's get this on the books. Are you free Monday or Tuesday? Blah blah
I
blah."
like that. That's a good girl. Good girl. She's
And,
not a girl, but you know what I mean.
and then I wrote the PR team and was like, "I have spoken with Olivia. We're going to do this on Monday at 2 p.m.
And
Should
what
I
do they
send the link to you, or should I send it to her
and how do they
directly?"
react to that?
We have confirmed with Olivia that it is booked for. I was like, "Yeah, I no,
These
you
people
didn't need
don't do
to. I
anything.
confirmed it."
Yeah, that's why I get frustrated. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't like any of that. That when the day comes when I walk away from all of this, that is something I will not miss.
Yeah, the back and forth, the back and
Mhm.
forth. Something else I was just gonna ask you about that I saw up here. How old were your kids in 2018 when we first talked?
Um,
5 years ago.
well, 2018, I had a newborn because
Uh-huh.
Caroline was born in August, and you spoke to me
August.
in August.
I could have spoken to you in September, but I know that I pre-recorded those first 3 and they came out in October.
Yeah, I
So
had a
maybe it
newborn.
was September.
She was born August 12th of 2018. That was child number 5. So at that time, how many years ago was that?
5.
I had a 9-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a newborn.
Oh my
Mhm.
god.
Yeah.
How is your son doing being the only boy with all those girls?
He's wonderful. He's
Yeah.
really a really great kid. He's a complete stud at school.
Mhm,
Girls are in love with him.
mhm.
Boys want him to be their friend. I think it's because he's so nice.
Yeah,
He has like he doesn't really have he's not mean, but he's got good boundaries for himself. And
yeah.
he's just like fun to be around. He's really interested in other people.
Mhm.
He loves chatting with parents. Um,
Sounds like my son, really.
yeah,
But
I think
my son is, 18 years old, so we've got some different things going on, but he's like that too.
yeah.
He's just a really nice kid and doesn't mind talking to parents, and
Well, I
yeah.
called you the other day. We were talking about
Mhm.
modern day, and your son was chiming in.
Oh, yeah, he had kind of, he's a "Modern day, yeah, it's awesome,
Yeah, that's how Jack is. Jack's 12 now, so he's
Yeah.
getting up there.
And Mia is 14?
She's 14 and a half. Yeah, she likes me to point that out. Freshman in high school.
Okay.
And
Well
and such a different kid than when we were talking in 2018. It
yeah,
was
that's what
like
happens.
deep in figuring out like what's going on. Also she's my oldest, so that was hard. Now she's in high school and living her best life.
I know. I know. And with all those girls in your house, it's just a
They
lot of,
fight all the time
I know. The, the,
about
the,
dumb stuff. About like they right now what they fight a lot about is like stealing each other's skincare products. And I'm like, meanwhile, I wash my face maybe 3 times a week. And they're
okay. So
like
wait.
fancy skincare and makeup.
So Mia is 14. Does she
Mhm.
give the little ones the time of day? Because I had two older sisters and they're very
Yeah.
close in age, and I was 4 years younger, and they were close, but they didn't give me the time of day.
Oh, no, my sister didn't 4 years younger. I'm 4 years younger. She didn't give me the time of day. She does. She because they like her dancing, like,
Right.
she, like, teaches them routines, but if you take her makeup, she'll kill you.
Yeah.
She actually really enjoys the 2 oldest kids really love the youngest. They
Mhm.
love to be around her, but the youngest is like a sorority sister. She's like she stays up the latest. She wants to hang out. She's very chatty. I think she'll probably be a comedian.
Which is the one that gives 20%?
That is Hayes. That's my 3rd. She's my CEO.
Okay.
She if she gets stuck on something and can't get off of it, like, if she's frustrated about something,
Uh-huh.
like, this morning, she's like, "I have to answer these questions." I'm like, "You're gonna be late for school. I have to answer these questions." She's just wired very much like my husband,
Oh,
and
okay.
they look exactly alike, and he
Yeah.
loves it. He's like, "Come
Yeah.
here, little twin."
That's great because both of my kids look like my husband, and only a little
And
bit
he's
does
very
John
cute.
look
Your husband's
as
very, very cute.
he is cute. I'll tell him you said that, though.
Very cute.
My daughter loves that gay guys think he's cute. My daughter's always like,
Oh, that's funny.
all the gay guys think you're cute, Dad." He's like, "All right, at least somebody does." You know, he's
Oh.
he's like, "I'll take whatever I can get."
My kids look like my husband too.
Yeah, nobody looks like
Mhm.
me. And sometimes people are like, "John kinda looks like you." I'm like, "Oh, thanks for saying that. I know you're not
But
telling
you
the
know what's
truth."
gonna happen when they have kids, they'll end up looking like you.
Well, when I mean, it's not like I'm so, like, good looking that I need everybody to look like me, but you would like them for not just be like, "Both your kids look exactly like
Oh,
your
yeah.
husband." I'm like, "Okay."
Well, I grew up with hearing how my sister and I look nothing alike. "You look nothing alike. Are you sure that you have the same father? You look nothing." Now she has 2 kids, and the daughter looks exactly like my kids.
Yes, I've seen the one is she the one in college?
Yeah, she looks exactly like my kids.
Yeah. I'll tell you a funny story. So, because most everybody in my family, they live in Mississippi. I do have 2 relatives that live up here now, a niece and a nephew that are married, which is great because then I get to see them and go play with the baby and stuff. But so my 2 sisters live in Mississippi, and they have a huge, they're close in age and they have a lot of friends in common, and they're in a big friend group with lots of interchanging because of our sorority stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have always lived in Mississippi or they always come back.
Mhm.
So the funniest thing is that so I have 2 cousins, twin cousin girls, Missy and Paige, and they're just funny. They're
Paige
just
is
funny.
such a Southern name.
Paige. And my cousin Paige said to me one time, so my sister tells me this. My sister goes, "Oh, yeah, like I was wherever I was." And I said, "Oh, and my sister Ray Paige's come in town." They're like, "We didn't even know you had a sister." And whenever I'm in town, if I see someone and they'll say, "Do you know my sister Ray Payne?" And they'll go, "We didn't even know you had a sister." So my cousin Paige goes, "Next time someone says that," she said this to my sister. She goes, "Next time someone says that, you should go, 'We didn't know either. We just found
Yes.
out.'"
Yes.
She was like, "Basically, call your mom a whore." Like, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah, yeah.
laughing so hard. I was like, "Yes." So I'm just waiting. Every time I go to Jack's, I'm waiting for someone to say it to my face, which has happened, but it didn't happen on the last job because now I've got it ready. I'm going to be like, "They didn't know either. They just found out," just to see what they'll do,
Mm.
because everybody's so proper and trying to like make
Yes. Oh,
everything
of
okay.
course. Yeah.
They'll be like, "Oh my gosh, she's just kidding. She's a comedian. She has a podcast. Like she just says things, you know."
Yeah. I have a sister who is so mean to me.
My older
Even
sister was horrible to me when
yeah,
I was
like,
growing up.
she's
Horrible.
really tough, like but
Yeah.
yeah. But then I'm so confused when I go visit her because her friends are like, "Oh my god, all she does is talk about you." I'm like, "What?"
Yeah.
It's very confusing.
My sisters aren't mean to me now, but my oldest sister was very mean to both of us when we were young, very mean. Like my one sister still has like moon-shaped scars in her hand from my sister's nails, like very mean. But
Mm.
she's the most genuine, wonderful, helpful person. She's out in the community. She's giving sandwiches to homeless people as she passes them. I mean, she just couldn't be a more wonderful person now. So I'm like, I guess it's just you're making up for all that time you were slammed the door on my hand when I was 8 because I walked in your room. You
Yep.
know, yeah,
Mhm.
I guess that's what happens. So, well, I'm just so interested to follow your kids. And okay, this is funny. So, remember on the Real Housewives OC reunion when Gina asked Shannon if she could name her kids,
Yes.
and Shannon goes, "Well, I thought about that the other day. I go, can I name Kate Casey's 5 kids? Because you got 5.
Well, I do have a lot.
Okay, let me see if I can do it.
Yeah,
I won't be able to,
I never assume people. Here's the difference in me.
but I
Like,
don't think I can name them in order, but I think I can name them.
I never assume anybody pays attention to anything in my life. So I would never assume anybody would know the names of my kids. I don't know why people would know someone else's kids, right?
But we are friends. You know the names of my kids. You
I
know that.
know, but like I have a lot.
Okay, are you ready?
Yeah,
I think I can name them, but I don't think it's gonna be in order. So we have Mia, Jack, Caroline, Hayes, and Sutton.
that's all. That's right. Yeah.
Was that
Car-
that's is that the right order?
no, it goes
Okay.
Mia, then Jack, and then Hayes, and then Sutton, and then Caroline. I should, for the listeners who care, Hayes is spelled Hayes. I was not on drugs and didn't name her Haze. Thank you very much.
I have a
It's a
friend whose
family
kid is
name, Hayes.
Haze because that was a family name.
Yeah, it's Hayes. And then Amelia is my oldest, but we call her Mia. I named her after
Oh,
Amelia Earhart. And then
okay.
Grace, so she's Amelia Grace, and Grace for Grace Kelly.
Wow.
And then Jack is Jack Holden, Holden for Holden Caulfield from Catcher in the Rye, and Jack is
Okay.
for Jack Kennedy. Hayes'
Okay.
family name, Sutton, is the name of the neighborhood my grandmother lived in England when she was studying music at the Royal Academy of Music. And
Okay.
then Caroline is because I love the Kennedys.
Okay. All
But
right.
when but I didn't know her middle name, and no, actually, no, you know what? I was going between Caroline and Collins. I like those names,
Mhm.
and I had all the friends my friends in the delivery room, and the baby started to crown. I was like, what are we gonna name? Because he wouldn't decide if what the name was, and he's like, I think I've decided, and asked everybody to leave the room so we could discuss it, and the baby's literally like coming out of the vagina. I went, are you kidding? And he goes, I've decided we should name her Caroline. I go, okay, great. Can you get everybody back in? And he goes, and I've decided on the middle name. And I go, okay, fine. Okay, fine. And he goes, Bella. And I went, what?
No,
And he
that
goes,
doesn't go
Bella.
together.
He goes, because Caroline means strong and Bella means beautiful. I go, fine, wonderful, great. Can everybody come back in? So, I mean, Bella was not really my choice, but
Caroline Bella. I feel like Bella's more of a first name than a middle name.
well, also Hayes' middle name is Isabel, Isabel.
Oh.
Why? Huh? But at that point, I just was like, whatever, man.
You're like,
Sure.
"It's kid number 5, let's do it."
And also,
Let's
she'll get married and drop the middle name anyway. Who cares?
I love talking about names with people just because
I do too.
it's just such a interesting topic to me just because of where I grew up and the people's names. I mean, it would never be a
Yeah.
consideration for me just to name somebody, um, Caroline because I liked it. It's just not a
Mm.
consideration. You have to use
I
only
feel like
family
that's very
names.
true to Southern name. Yeah.
You gotta use all family names. My friend,
Hmm.
when you're talking about Hayes, I have a good friend, her name is Mary Preston, like Mary Payne, Mary Preston Hayes,
Mm.
and then she got married, she has a different last name, but her kids' names are Preston and Hayes.
I love it. I
Yeah,
love it.
yeah,
That's a great.
yeah,
Yeah.
she was like, "Does it sound narcissistic?" I was like, "No, it sounds
No, it's
great."
wonderful.
Yeah, and it could go
Those are
either
great
way, but the
names.
girl is Preston and the boy is Hayes.
You know what I thought? I just said to somebody who was pregnant that I think that they, I like to name other people's kids too. Um, she's having a girl, and I said, you know what, you should name her. I said, my son is Jack Holden, but I said, I think Holden would be a wonderful girl's name.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. There's no name
Hmm.
you could tell me that I would think is weird or anything. I'm like, "Yeah, that tracks." Like, there's
Hmm.
literally almost I will tell you what threw me. On 90 Day this season, 90 Day the other way, Brandon, who spells it Brandan, so I was like,
Yeah.
Brandan,
Sometimes the spellings are hard.
Brandan go yeah, sometimes.
Yeah.
Brandan moves to the Philippines to be and he marries this girl, Mary. They had a baby and they named her Midnight.
Okay.
Okay,
I see. I'm not like you. I get frustrated. You know what?
well, that's annoying because they're like, is it if you're like, "Okay, it's cute, we're gonna name her Midnight, and then we're gonna call her this," but there's no good way to shorten that cute.
No, well, also I think of
Biddy?
like Kylie Jenner named her daughter Stormy. Well, what if Stormy has a really great, fun disposition, but she's stuck with a name that's like cloudy and dark?
Also, it sounds like a stripper.
Well, that goes without saying. Okay,
Yeah.
another thing my friend Tim Ryan pointed out to me that Candace, season 1 of Real Housewives of Potomac, he's like, "You mean
Candy ass.
candy ass?"
Candy ass. Yeah, it's just
Oh,
why are you
man.
adding letters?
Mhm.
Why and on one season of Love After Lockup, we had 3 different people named Brittany spelled 3 different ways, and I was like,
I
you
don't enjoy
can't."
the I at the end of a name either.
There's a girl in Love After Lockup
It
who has
feels
a
like someone's
daughter.
about to like fall off a cliff. It doesn't feel like it's closed up to me.
The Love After Lockup girl's daughter is Kylie, Kyllei.
That's a lot. Okay, the girls watch a YouTube of a family with like 18 kids, and they all have insane names too, but they're all spelled really weird.
Are they like the Duggars or the Plaths? They're like in a weird cult?
No, 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 no. It's like a lot of like adoptions but it's all like weird spellings. Like what's it
It's hard.
like I don't know. If let's say the name's Kelsey, it would
Mhm.
be like Chelieee. Where you're like, why do you need all these E's?
Yeah. Yeah. It just that's why, honestly, because of my name being difficult, I knew once I moved out of the South. I mean, I didn't know it when I lived in the South, but when I moved out of the South and I realized it was going to be difficult to explain to people every single time I said my name that my name is Mary Payne, not Mary.
Mhm.
Oh, so you use your first name and your last name? Nope, Payne's my middle name. Why do you use both? Now we're done with the conversation. I've had it 6 times
Yeah.
today. And I realized I wanted to name my kids something very simple and easy. And so I did, Anna and John. I just I 'cause
Also,
yeah.
I like it when I don't like when people don't respect what the parent named. Like, um, Rachel Duffy, remember from Real World?
Yeah.
Okay, so she's
Mary
my friend of mine.
Sean.
She has 9 kids. One of her daughters is, Maria Victoria,
Mhm.
and people try to shorten it. It's like, no, that's what she named her daughter.
It's a double name, Maria Victoria.
Just call her Maria Victoria.
It's a mouthful, but I
But
understand.
that was her choice.
That was her choice.
Yeah.
But yeah, nobody's gonna call her that.
I hope they
They're gonna call
do.
her M. Vic, you know?
Mm, true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's gonna be rough. That's gonna be
I
rough.
have a difficult name because I have 2 first names. So I'm endlessly annoyed because if people call me Casey, like my
Oh,
last name, and I'm like,
uh-huh.
no, 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 no. Like we're not cool like that. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
they're
yeah.
either not listening and they'll go, But when I was younger, I was Katie Casey. That's a hard one.
Okay. Yeah.
Katie Casey. You know, I still get calls from the Kate Spade store for people trying to find it. I don't understand that. They call me. Hi, is this a Kate Spade store? I'm like, no. Why? How did you get my number? What? Or like drinks at Starbucks are never right.
What do you mean?
They never write like if I say Kate, Casey or whatever, or Kate or even Kate. I don't know the way I say it. Like it'll come out Keat. I'm like, what?
That is funny because I
There,
just feel
when I
like
was at,
Kate cannot be easier.
you would think. So I remember I was in Virginia Beach and I had some call with some telemarketing person and I said, my name's Kate. No, they were reading my name. They go, so is it Cot Cassie? And I went, it's Kate Casey. So my friend Ashley and I like couldn't stop laughing. So since then, 20 years ago,
Oh.
she still calls me Cot Cassie. And my friend Greg, I call him Grog. Ashley is Osh. And that's what we call each other because of that stupid inside joke from 20 years ago. Cot.
Well,
And my friend
see?
Megan, my other friend Megan calls me Cotty, Kottie. Like if I send her Christmas gifts, I say from Cotty.
Well, so you probably know the name of their kids, and they know the name of your kids.
Well, yeah, because
I'm
if they're
just
really
trying to tell
close.
you that people should know the name of your children. That's what I'm telling you. And I
I
think I
know.
deserve a medal
You know what? I don't even actually talk that much about my kids when I go out.
when you're exhausted.
Sometimes people are like, you're so cool. You don't really talk about your kids that much. And I was like, yeah, because why would you care about
And also, I've talked about them all day, and I'm here having a drink at this bar to not talk about them.
totally? But like, I would never assume. I find, especially with me in high school at that, Bananas High School, everybody is so braggadocious about their kids. Every
Yeah.
child is like
Yeah.
a Division
Oh,
One athlete. Blah, blah.
mm,
I'm like, I don't know if people really want to hear about your great kids. I don't know.
No, in a situation like that too, where it's competitive,
It's
it's just
so
actually probably
annoying.
making somebody else feel bad,
Yes.
and then putting pressure on
Oh,
their
you know
kid that
what?
doesn't need to be there and
I have a very good friend here. I love her because she's from Baltimore, so there's a soft spot in my heart, and if she were listening to this, and she probably will, she'll laugh at it, but, um, her 2 children are literal geniuses.
Uh-huh, okay,
Like, her husband went to MIT, she's like a master's in English literature. They're brilliant. So, of
okay.
course, their children are. And her one daughter she's in 6th grade, she does high school math.
Mm,
She can't even they have to find a special school for her because she's so advanced.
right.
And so she'll come over and, she'll talk to me a little bit about it. Like, well, we're looking by the way, they went to a school in Los Angeles to look at it, to check it out because it's Harvard Westlake and they saw Ben Affleck there. I said, did you go talk to them? Tell them about me? I don't know. She's like, oh no, you can't do that. I'm like, what is wrong with you? So anyway, they're looking at
What was he
schools.
doing there? He's not a genius, one of his kids was there?
I think one of his kids is a
Yeah,
genius, probably.
not him.
Um, so the school's like really filled with like little geniuses. So when she talks to me, she's like, well, she's doing like, calculus, and she goes on and we really need the right school. And the longer I go, you make me feel like my kids are so stupid
So stupid, right.
because they are literal geniuses. These girls
Yeah.
are insane.
Well, that's why you do have to be careful sometimes,
But then she's like, well, they can't play sports. I mean, if they're really, really good in one thing, usually they're not so good at the other things.
she's probably worried to death about them socially, you know what I mean, where you're not
Of
worried about that
course.
with your
Yeah.
kids.
But like they're so smart. I'm like, oh yeah, like we're just trying to pass algebra here.
Uh, you and I have talked about it ad nauseam with the kids in the high school and the band. Um, so, all right, so back around, we're going to wrap it up. We're going to go back around to what my podcast was about initially. And when I first was listening, Kate, and at the end, I was like, tell me what podcast you're listening to and tell me why. I was
Oh,
like,
what did I say? I forget.
well, first of all, I was so proud of myself because I was like, that's a really great way to wrap up a podcast about podcasts is to get recommendations of other podcasts.
Yeah,
I was like, I was just really, I cannot tell you how nervous I was to listen to these episodes.
I'm
And I was
sure.
so pleasantly surprised to be like, oh my gosh, I wasn't terrible out of the gate. I was just thought it was going to be
Yeah, but
awful.
you forget at that point you had really studied podcasts. Unlike a lot of people are
Yes,
like, "Oh, what are podcasts?" Like a lot of celebrities do that. Like, "Oh, I'll do it. Like, I'll just start it. I'll have a big audience," and then they're like, "Whoa, this is hard."
it's
You had
work.
really studied podcasts before you
Yeah.
started your own.
Yeah. For years. That's why I
Mhm.
wanted to do it because I was so fascinated by the process.
Mhm.
What you said was the podcast that you liked, and also what I did was I warned the guest, I'm going to ask you this, so that at the end they
Oh,
weren't like,
okay.
oh shit, and then some would say flat out like, don't ask me that because I never listened to podcasts.
Which,
And I'm
by
like,
the way,
okay,
the
yeah,
person that says it is a whore. I hate it to this day when somebody says to me as a podcaster, I don't really listen to other podcasts. I'm like, how you're not to me, then you're not a successful person because you are so consumed by your own show that
yeah,
I mean, that's such a stupid business principle.
yeah. You got
Like
to listen
you
to
have to
something.
listen to other things and learn and grow and
Yeah,
build
yeah.
networks and
Oh yeah.
it's really the celebrities that say I don't listen to podcasts.
You said you loved How to Be Amazing with Michael Ian Black.
Yeah, and you know what's crazy? It's so funny you say that. His daughter
Uh huh.
is best friends with my niece in college.
Oh
So
wow.
I said that then, and then it's full circle. I'll send you. You know what? I'll send you the picture to put with the episode.
Uh,
Ruthie and Sydney go to college together. They're best friends. And like when I went to the Sigma Chi alumni parents weekend party, and was a legend there. Ruthie is with me in the picture with Sydney. So I wrote him. I was like, just so you know, I live in Newport. So if Ruthie needs to come home for a home cooked meal, and he was like, oh my God, she would love that. Full
have you ever
circle.
had him on?
No, because I feel like he would never watch a reality. I think Ruthie even was like, oh, he never would watch any of that. He's very cerebral, actually.
Well, so are you. So you could have him on to just talk about a
Yeah,
book
maybe I will.
or a
I'll actually.
documentary.
Yeah, I should. I
Yeah,
should.
use that, girl. And then you said you really loved the Lance Armstrong
I
podcast.
still do. I really like. I think he's a great podcast host, actually.
Okay,
There are a
that's
lot of good episodes. The one I may have referenced, he did a great one with Rahm Emanuel that stayed with me. He said
you referenced that, yeah.
that they had Rahm Emanuel goes on family trips with his kids and they spend the whole year planning it out.
Uh-huh.
And so the kids are more invested in the trip because they've
Mhm.
like studied that stayed with me. My new favorite show of the last couple of years is so good. It's called Heavyweight and it's done by Jonathan Goldstein, and he's a producer and he's Canadian. He's so funny. And every episode begins with him calling his like childhood best friend. And
Mhm.
she's Marie Claude, I think is her name. She's always annoyed. So the
Uh-huh.
begin she's like, "Oh my God, why are you calling to me?" And then it kind of goes in the episode. And so the whole theme of the show is he's helping someone unburden something that's heavy on them. And
Mhm.
every episode's different. So like my favorite episode ever, which you would love, is there's a girl calls him and she's like, "All right, when I was in college, I was kicked out of the sorority, and I still to this day have no idea why." So he goes back and he calls all the sorority sisters to find out what the heck happened. One episode, there was a couple that
Well, what happened? I have a friend that happened to, where
you know
she's
what?
very still bitter about it now. She's still bitter about it now. We all know why she was kicked out.
Oh yeah, I could. Well, this particular girl got cancer and she survived, but I think it became everything was about her and the cancer and her story that they were exhausted by it.
Wow. Wow. I hope they
Mhm.
weren't tried else. They kicked out a girl for having cancer. That's terrible.
I mean, they may have been. It was like a big school. I think yeah, it was like maybe Florida. But they were, and then he kept calling the headquarters of the sorority, and he was like,
They're
"I'd
not
like
gonna
some
answer that.
answers."
They're
He would not
no.
get answers.
No.
Um,
They're not gonna comment on that shit. Nope.
One couple had a child, a daughter, and placed the child for adoption. And then they ended up getting married and having kids, and he helped them track down the daughter. So that
Wow.
one I was crying. Oh, the best one. It's 2 episodes,
Okay.
but the first one is called Barbara Shut, and then the second part is Barbara something else because you realize there's a name change.
Uh-huh.
But the episode begins with him talking to his mother-in-law, and she says, "You know, I've been thinking about it. You know, I always talk about that great time I spent in I think it was Amsterdam, like right after college. And there was an American girl, and I had the best time with her. And her name was Barbara Schutz, and I've always wondered what happened to her."
Uh-huh.
So he starts making calls, and then I'm not going to spoil it. It was an episode. I was shocked. I would like gasped in the car. I was like, "Oh, that's not what I expected." And I have to tell you, I've told that story and to for some reason I usually tell that to men, and men will write me and they're like, "I just listened to the episode." And
Oh.
it's totally about a woman named Barbara Schutz.
Mhm.
So if people are like looking for episodes, I'm like, that one. And then recently I've been listening to Who Killed JFK, and
Mhm.
that's done by Soledad O'Brien and Rob Reiner. You
Okay.
know, I'm obsessed with
Alright,
JFK stuff.
I know
So
you are.
that's one to listen to. I did not like Scamanda. I didn't like the typewriter sound in the background. It started to get on my nerves. And they kept recapping it like, "Okay, keep moving."
I felt that it was one episode too long. They could have compressed it a little.
Mhm.
I will tell you what was interesting in my Pay in the Pod days. I did talk to, a guy that I interviewed twice, and it's not gonna the name of it is not gonna come to me now, about a very well-known podcast that he did, and then a smaller one that he did later. He was with Payne Lindsay's group, Tenderfoot, at the time. I don't know if
I was thought you were gonna say Payne Lindsay.
no, no, no. People have got real opinions on Payne Lindsay, but,
I think I've interviewed him actually.
yeah, people have real opinions on him.
I think they have opinions of a lot of podcasters.
I'm talking podcasters and executives and
Oh,
in the podcast space, in the true crime space,
got it.
and then it crime cons say like in a podcast movement, like the buzz around is not
Wow.
it's very ego
Got
it's
it.
about ego. But
Mm.
this guy, at the time of the first one that was really big, it could have been Culpable, which was a huge podcast. It could have
Mhm.
been the guy that did that one, and then he was doing a smaller one. And so I was like, I'd love to talk to you about the smaller one. Of course, he was like thrilled to do it, to promote it. And he said at the end, he said, because you listen to so many and this is sort of your thing, tell me what you really thought.
Mm.
And Kate, I've been like waiting my whole life for somebody to like ask me what I really thought, right? Because I had opinions because I listened to so
So many.
many. And I said, here's what I really thought. it was too much music playing over the talking all the time.
Yeah.
You're talking and telling about something, and there was always a music.
I don't like
It
it.
was very hard to listen to when you're trying to compete with your ears, especially if you have on headphones and the music is kind of in one. And I said, so that bothered me that the music never faded, or sometimes you just need the voice. And he goes, that is sort of, and I'm really, it may not be tenderfoot, but whatever with the network he was with, he was like,
Mhm.
let's just say it was tenderfoot. I don't know. That was a very tenderfoot thing that they kind of, have that. And I said, well, it made it, that's what I would change. And
Mhm.
and then every slowly but surely, as people started to understand what I was doing, and that I had a not a great big audience, but a decent audience, and was talking to some pretty well-known podcasters, they would sort of be like, "Hey, did you listen to this and what did you think?"
Oh, I like that.
And I was like,
That's powerful.
I can actually tell you what I
Mhm.
thought. I thought, like with the Scamanda, I would have said, too much recapping.
Too
People are
much.
listening. You don't need to explain. Remember from episode 2 is this we don't need to remember episode 2. We've heard this person all along,
I
you
know
know?
that this is a strange thing too, but I didn't really necessarily like that it was an American story with a British narrator. It didn't make
Mm.
sense to me.
Oh, interesting. I guess because she's just the one that broke the story.
I get it, but it seemed like an outsider covering an American story.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like, should I narrate something about, like, a scam artist in, like, a little British town?
You're right.
I don't think people would enjoy that in England.
I know of such a good scam artist story. It is wild. It is ongoing. If I told you the Instagrams and stuff to follow that of the people that are obsessed with this person, that's this horrible scammer from when I grew up. I mean, not, it still is
Yeah.
around. Like, it is scam after scam after scam, and it involves many different husbands.
Ooh.
A Mary Kay Letourneau first husband situation, like a
Why
student
aren't you
that
selling the show about that?
I don't know where to who to give it.
Eliza Rosen.
I don't know who to give it to, but it
Eliza
is
Rosen, that's who you
it's
give
in
it to.
and
Sell it
then
to her.
I you just wouldn't believe it. You wouldn't believe some of the things that this person does, and there's Instagram accounts, mostly there's Twitter accounts that I follow that I read like the next novel. Anytime a post comes down, I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah.
what'd she do now?" Like, it's
You gotta
wild.
sell that. Do you know Eliza?
Yes, of course.
Okay, why aren't you talking to her about this?
I didn't know I should.
Yeah, for that
The Queen of the
100%.
Con,
Yeah.
season
But even if
10.
it was something separate, you could do a whole
Yeah,
thing. Yeah.
I'll talk to Eliza, you're right, 'cause I'm
Yeah.
always like, I'll ask Kate who I should pitch this story
I have
to.
to say I am very good at that.
Oh, yeah.
I can always figure out the best person someone should talk to.
Because like, I mean, I could be like, "Hey, I think I could send it to whoever is that person that did Scamanda," that original writer
Yeah.
but then I'm like, "How do I get in touch with them, and how do I explain to them this story with they don't really know me?"
Mhm.
You know? So, yeah, Elisa's good because she
Eliza
knows
is
me.
really the best one.
"Eliza, I'm gonna call you later
And
this
also, she's like
afternoon."
a vault. Like, you
She
would feel
is.
safe with your story.
I wouldn't feel like she'd try to steal it from me.
Never, never,
Love
no.
Eliza
You
Rosen,
can't really say
guys.
that about a lot of other people.
No, you really can't.
Mm-mm.
It's funny you're talking about heavyweight because on the episode I did with Matt and Jake, one of the ones they had said back in 2020 when I interviewed them was heavyweight.
Oh, yeah.
Because a lot of people didn't say the same ones, which you would think, especially at that time, way back then, so many of the big ones like Armchair Expert, or they were the
Yeah.
big ones that everybody would say. But when I talk to people, almost everybody had different ones.
Well, it makes sense heavyweight because Matt is somebody who likes to go deep on somebody in 2.2 seconds. By the way, he's on my episode Saturday,
Hmm.
and he tells this heartbreaking story about how, well, to me, it was heartbreaking. And the net is like he's in Oklahoma.
Hmm.
His family knows he's gay. I mean,
Hmm.
they're accepting of it and always have been, but the
Yeah.
rest of the world's a different story. So he does like musical theater, and then he gets a job at the Clinique counter of all places.
Yeah. He
And
later
he's
graduated to the Mac counter, by the way.
Oh, okay, good. Yep.
Yeah.
So, he's at the counter and he's working for a couple weeks, and the woman that hired him says something like, I'm paraphrasing, like, "I'm really glad I ended up hiring you
Uh-huh.
because, I didn't know if I should, and I went to my Bible study and we prayed about it, and they were like, 'I don't think you should hire a gay guy.
Huh.
I don't think this is not gonna work out well. But
Huh.
you know what? Despite that, I hired you, and Yeah, it's all worked out. And he said, well, and that's when I knew I had to leave Oklahoma. And then I went, wait a minute. How do you not cry when someone says that to you? And he made a joke. He was like, well, Casey, I'm dead inside. But he said, but
Yeah.
honestly, you become so hardened
Mhm.
to people and what they say. That was heartbreaking. And then there's like another theme too of those episodes is like the guys that we know that are podcast hosts that are gay
Mhm.
saying they became very observant of people because they had to figure out always who they were safe around.
Yep.
In the same way that I feel like I interview a lot of survivors of
Mhm.
trauma or
Mhm.
assault, and they say the same thing. Like, I have to be like, I'm very cautious around people because I have to figure out who I'm safe around.
Well, it's the same just as women, you think about every
Mhm.
time you get in your car or walk to your car, do you think guys think that when they go like yesterday I went into a store, sat in my car, but the first thing I did was lock the door even though the car wasn't on. I
Mhm.
locked the door because I'm sitting there for 2 seconds like answering an email. Um, and then I'm looking the whole time. I'm just sitting in the parking lot. Do you think guys do that? No.
No.
Mm-mm. They're not
Mm-mm.
worried somebody's gonna come and try to get them in their car or walking to their car. I'll tell you that
Mhm.
my son said about his girlfriend the other day. He was walking her. They were here at the house, and he goes, "I'm going to walk Kat out to her car because she was like parked on a cul-de-sac behind our house." I go, "All right," and I was like, "Okay." I was like, "It's cold, throw your coat on or whatever." And she's like, "Bye," and he goes, "I know." He goes, "I shouldn't have to walk her out to her car, but she's scared of somebody coming at her ankles with razor blades." I was like,
Well,
"What?" And I started laughing. I go, "Girl, nobody's laying under your car in our cul-de-sac with razor blades." And she goes, "You never know."
it
And I was
must have
like,
been like something we watched as kids because I was always afraid of going to my bed that someone was going to grab my ankles before I went to
"Me
sleep.
too."
What is like? Did we watch something?
I was scared of Bigfoot, and I was scared somebody would grab my ankles. I'd have to run and jump on my bed.
Yeah.
And then I was also scared of George Hamilton, not George Harrison.
Oh,
He
with the
was a hard
deep tan.
deep tan. I was afraid of from that movie Love at First Bite. He was a
Oh,
vampire.
right. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
So I'd get in the bed and pull my covers all the way up to my neck. And I was like always making sure my windows were completely closed. There was no sliver of light because that way, like Bigfoot couldn't see in, even though I was on the second floor. Bigfoot couldn't see in, and George Hamilton from Love at First Bite couldn't get me. And then I'd always take a flying leap across my bedroom so that nobody could get me from under the bed.
Oh my god.
Not
Wow.
crazy. The things that
Yes.
influence you when you're
It's
little,
just little things.
and being terrified of the Wizard of Oz, the flying monkeys, terrified.
Oh, I was more
Terrified.
afraid of the witch. And then I watched a movie one time where a girl is like swimming underwater and then somebody handcuffs her to the ladder and she drowns. And the other one was this
Ah!
movie called
Ah!
I think it's called The Tempest or something. William Devane's in it, and it's from the 80s, and there's like a radiation issue,
Okay.
and nobody can drink the water, and they're drinking like powdered milk, and like every kid in the family starts to die. And Jane, what's her name, is the mother, and she has to rip like these white sheets and roll up the bodies, and like, why did my mom let me watch that?
See, but you think about kids now, and they're so oversaturated with media and movies,
Hmm.
and their kids have seen so many worse things. My kids have never had a nightmare or never been like, "I'm
Hmm.
too afraid to get out of my bed because somebody's going to grab my ankles." My kids are like, "We watched The Exorcist last night. I'm 12. Like, who cares?"
Yeah, my friend's daughter told me last night. She's 9. She's like, "Oh yeah, I've watched The Shining." I'm like, "Oh, okay, wow,
I will never rewatch The Shining. I saw it one and done.
yeah."
I don't go in the ocean because of Jaws. Like,
Yeah,
I
no,
just
I agree with you.
yeah.
Forget it.
And then you think about the amount of media and things that they have on them now,
Yeah.
and it doesn't affect them at all.
Mm-mm.
Whenever that movie It came out,
Mhm.
the one that came out in the last 5, 6 years, Stephen King, I remember I told my kids, I go, "You're not allowed to watch that. Like, it's gonna be so scary, you can't watch it." They're like, "Okay, mom." Of course, I saw it at a friend's house,
They're like, "This is a joke. What's wrong with you?"
and they're like, "You really think it's, like, scary that, like, a clown lives in the gutter?" I was like, "Yeah, it's real scary."
Yeah. Conversely, what's funny is I showed Jack a lot of old movies that I thought were hilarious, and he thinks they're hilarious. Like Better Off Dead, we just watched. He dying. Started to watch Funny Farm last night, and he's like, "This is really funny."
Okay, I watched with my kids when I tell you exactly when it was. It was when my husband was gone to, treatment. So the kids were so it was 9 years ago. So they
Yeah.
were They were, what, 12 and 10,
Yeah.
9 and whatever. I watched Uncle Buck.
Great
I was
movie.
like, you guys, this is the
Great
movie from
movie.
my childhood. We're gonna
Mhm.
like I had to get it on DVD and had to
Oh,
find a
yeah.
DVD player. We watched it. First of all, that movie is so inappropriate.
Totally.
It's rated PG because back then they didn't have PG-13. But it's totally PG-13, and my kids were nowhere. We're not 13.
Yeah.
There are so many inappropriate things in that movie.
Yeah.
It's 16 Candles I had them watch, and
16 Candles is a doozy.
I was
Yep.
like, they're like, "Mom,
Mhm.
they're so racist." I was like, "I totally forgot
Mhm.
about them being racist in this movie."
Yep.
Oh my god.
And the rape
Listen,
stuff, the, like, getting the underwear, I mean, a lot, but you gotta, like, fast forward through it. Well, Better Off
because
Dead is, like, about a kid, like, "I'm gonna kill myself because my girlfriend broke up with me." But if you look past all that, there's a lot of funny stuff in it.
you guys, this is why Kate and I are the way we are.
We're dorks.
We're dorks, and also we think these yeah.
Do you
Yeah,
remember that movie Better Off Dead?
I do, but I don't remember ever seeing
Oh,
it. It seems like that guy in it, what was his name? The star.
John Cusack. And then
No,
Booger
no, not
from
John Cusack. I'm thinking of the other guy. Wasn't there another guy?
No, mm-mm. The guy that played Booger in Revenge of the Nerds, he plays the 6-year senior, and he's really, really funny.
That's not who I'm thinking
And
about.
so
It's
John
another
Cusack's character his name's Lane.
guy. Mhm.
And the friend goes, "Lane, I've been at this school for 6.5 years. I'm no dummy." And Jack says it every day. He's like,
Well
thinks that was the funniest line ever. And I was like, "You're right."
well, it's just like,
Do you remember the family across the street is the French exchange student? And she's so upset because the son in the house is played by the guy that everybody thinks that, like, worked at Nickelodeon and may have, like, been, like, inappropriate with kids. The
uh-huh.
guy from Head of the Class, the dopey guy, Dan something or another.
Yeah.
Anyway, he plays the Ronnie, the annoying kid across the street. He's like a dork. And they have a French exchange student, and the mother's like a disaster. And John Cusack's girlfriend broke up with him, and he meets the exchange student, and she's like pretending she can't speak English because she hates everybody. But they start falling in love, but she can actually speak English. So anyway, the family goes over for a dinner across the street, and the mother's trying to impress the French exchange student. She's like, "Look, I made French bread. It's salad with French dressing." And then she takes Perrier out and she goes, "And look, Peru," instead of Perrier. Yeah, it's a great movie. Great movie.
That guy's name is Dan Snyder, by the way.
Dan Snyder, there you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's what we do,
He's
guys.
so gross.
So gross. He had a
Yeah,
foot fetish with children, so there's
awful.
that. Look that guy up, everybody. Dan Snyder, Nickelodeon, not Dan Snyder, former owner of the Washington Commanders.
Got it. Right.
Everybody knows where to follow Kate Casey. You know where to listen to her podcast. It's called Reality Life with Kate Casey, and she has a great Instagram where she has a lot more followers than me. We just talked about.
Oh, but you know what you really got to do? It's really important that you sign up for my what to watch list, which comes out
Yes.
on Mondays, because it tells you what to watch each week. So go to
Yeah.
katecasey.substack.com. It is free, folks. And you just go, you sign up, and you get an email every Monday about what to watch.
It really is a lifesaver. I heard
Mhm.
Kathy Griffin say on her episode with you that she subscribes to your Substack.
She sure does. She actually is a paid subscriber, and she texts me regularly about archived stuff in the list. She goes back and looks for stuff she hasn't watched. She's actually like a dork like we are. Like, she watches every documentary.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that because I've read all her books, and like I said,
Mhm.
I've seen her on tour many times. I think we'd be friends. And last question that I didn't ask you, why was your blog called Love and Knuckles?
Because when I was at boarding school, I explained this in episode 631, which is the first episode of my Saturday series. You can go back and listen.
Okay.
When I go to this boarding school called the Milton Hershey School, which is for underprivileged kids, and I loved it because I liked studying people, and everybody else's parents were totally weird. My family was totally weird. And there was this one dad who amused me more than others because he would show up and he would be dressed in a completely different decade. Like, in his mind, he still thought it was 1970. Drove up in like a Trans Am with like bell bottoms on.
Okay.
And he had sisters there were sisters that lived in my student home, the Roselli sisters. And they would tell me like, "Oh my God, my dad's so embarrassing." And I'm like, "Tell me everything."
Mhm.
So he would just do crazy things. Like, for example, for Christmas, one year at Christmas, he gave them a New Kids on the Block concert poster, but he forged all the names of the band members, which, by the way, when I did interview Jonathan Knight and Joey McIntyre did tell them that story. Anyway, New Kids on the Block, he would like forge their names, which I thought at the time, my sense of humor has always been very sarcastic and a little bit older than my own age group.
Yeah.
I thought that was absolutely the funniest thing I'd ever heard. So he just did stuff like that. He would sign all of the letters to them, Love and Knuckles, Dad. And I was like, what does that mean? And they go, we have no idea. And it just sort of like when I started my blog years and years ago, my husband's friend Travis said, you got to write about what you know. And I was like, what do I know? I know about pop culture. And I know about like my weird family. And he's like, well, so I took it from that, Love and Knuckles, the way he signed those letters. Okay. But then of course, after a while, people like, when I started my podcast, they're like, you can't call it Love and Knuckles. You have to have it with your name in it. And I'm so glad I did that.
Yeah.
Even though my husband just told me, you really should rebrand your show. I was like, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, I think you should. It's not known or anything. So what does it matter?
Alone.
Oh my God. Everybody subscribe to Casey's Substack. It's really good. It's just a little blurb that comes in your inbox and tells you what to watch the next week. And I literally consulted and sometimes I go back.
You should go back.
Search Kate Casey, and then I go back to remember like things that I
may have missed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So like, when's this coming out? What day?
This is going to come out around December 26th.
26th. Okay. So things to look for if you want to watch something that's like very interesting, an HBO documentary called Great Photo, Lovely Life, where this photographer, she's about 30. And as her grandmother's dying, she finds out that her grandfather was a pedophile. And she goes back and interviews all the people in the family, including the grandfather. So she's asking him on camera, like, why did you pursue little girls? And his answer is really shocking. It's dark and interesting.
No, I just downloaded that for my trip on my app. Yeah.
It's powerful. And I interviewed the photographer, so you can listen to that too. Another thing to watch, Murder in Boston, 3-part series, true crime about a murder that forever had an effect in Boston. A pregnant woman is shot and killed by her husband, but he says a black man did it. He's white. So for true crime series,
I've got one of those murders in my family,
Yes, I know. Yeah. So that, and I would say, you know what I always look forward to? The Kennedy Center honors.
Yeah.
They're always great. And people who are so deserving of these awards get to hear about their own life playback, and then people perform for them. And it always makes me cry. And here's a weird thing. If you're on social media, like TikTok in particular, go back and look for clips of a show called Long Lost Family that used to air on TLC. It'll make you cry your face off. It's these two hosts, Lisa Joyner, and I can't remember the other guy's name. He's super hot. But they were both adopted, and they helped adoptees find their birth parents or siblings, and it's a tearjerker. So like holiday time, you want a little emotional kind of stuff. Watch that. But if you like sports, I would say all of the box-to-box films shows, Full Swing, the Formula One racing, those are all great. Also, Peyton Manning's series Quarterback on Netflix is fantastic also. And if you like basketball, the Steph Curry documentary on Apple TV Plus is great too.
When are we getting the documentary about Larsa dating Michael Jordan Jr.?
Well, after that aired, I pitched with a business partner, Scottie Pippen, doing a doc about him, because after Last Dance, he was really fired up about how he was portrayed.
Yeah, well.
And he said at the time, he just didn't think he was ready yet. He was angry. I mean, I'm sure at this point, like ESPN has some deal with him already. They owe it to him, I think, to kind of hear a story. But I'm sure that's going to come out in it.
It should.
I really want to hear Scottie Pippen's story.
Yeah, it's fucked up.
It is.
It is.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, follow me on Instagram at Pink Shade Pod. And Kate, I'll talk to you later.
Later.
Bye. Today's guest on Payne in the Pod is Kate Casey. Kate has a hilarious podcast called Reality Life with Kate Casey. Kate is not only a mom of 5, but she's a stand-up comedian with a really interesting background who currently lives in California. Kate covers every reality show that you can think of. She covers the well-known ones and then ones you've never heard of and I've never heard of. I'd say she's an encyclopedia of reality show knowledge, and her podcast is always super entertaining, even if you haven't seen the show. So, Kate, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I've listened to your podcast for a long time. I think I first heard you on Heather McDonald's podcast doing maybe like a Real Housewives recap, and found out either you had a podcast or you were launching it at that time.
Maybe I was just launching it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I was in from the beginning. I think I'm going to say I'm a Gold Star diehard Kate Casey podcast fan.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. Tell me how you first got the idea to do this podcast.
So I had been writing Real Housewives recaps for a couple years. Heather McDonald was a fan of my recaps, and she invited me to be a guest on her podcast a couple times. And I just really enjoyed being on her show and enjoyed podcasts in general. So I came up with this idea that I loved reality television shows, and I was interested in catching up with people, some people that maybe were one-hit wonders on one show and no one had heard from them for years, and also people that had been on a really popular show, maybe that was currently filming, and just kind of touch base with them and find out how reality TV had changed their life. And then I also wanted an opportunity to connect with people from different walks of life, have them watch a reality show, and then talk about it. So it gives everyone sort of a full circle reality TV experience. I came to understand that most people lie when they say, oh, reality TV is garbage, but then they watch The Bachelor. I hate reality TV, but then they know everything about Real Housewives. Or, gosh, my wife always watches that show, but then they have an opinion. So it was similar to what I experienced people think about celebrity tabloids. Like they think that gossip rags are garbage, but then they haven't had an opinion on Angelina Jolie, Brad Pitt, and Jennifer Aniston. So yes. I just felt like it was a great connector. Reality TV shows are a great way to start conversations with people. And despite what other people think, it's not, reality TV cannot just be summed up as Real Housewives or The Bachelor. There are so many fantastic reality TV shows. So it was also a great opportunity to highlight shows that may not be written about in mainstream media, but I believe were really high quality.
Right. Now, once you got this idea, how long did it take for you to get it going, especially because you have a busy life outside of this?
Believe it or not, it wasn't that long, but this was 2 years ago. Heather, well, I don't know. I said to Heather, I have this great idea and I want to take it to some networks. And she said, I can introduce you to the head of my network, which is Wondery, where I am now. And so I met with Hernan, who runs network, and said, I have a great idea. And I put a proposal together. I think that something that may have helped, I don't want to speak for Hernan, but I think something that may have helped with my pitch is the fact that I came with 16 years of PR experience. So I was extremely mindful of how to market and, market your podcast, how to create relationships. So I think for them, that was helpful because they knew that they were partnering with somebody who would hustle. So I pitched it to the network, and then I think it actually went to air within a month and a half, maybe. And the process is very different now. I think if you probably pitch something to a network, they would want to hear like 6 episodes up front. And when I pitched it 2 years ago, I just sort of went in studio and we recorded the first one, and then we put the first one up, and then the second one and the third one. So obviously things have changed since then, but I came in as somebody with PR experience, and that probably helped.
So do you do most of this from your house? I know sometimes you have to go into a studio, but you must have a pretty sweet home studio.
I don't have a home studio. I do lots of it at home because I have young kids, and I also live in Orange County, and the studio's in LA. So for the first year, I went every single Tuesday. So I would drop my kids off at school at 8 o'clock, and then I would get to LA by 10. record from like 10:15 till 12:15 and then drive all the way back 2 hours to pick up my kids from school.
Gosh.
Became really hard after a while. And it's really difficult with booking. And, there were times I would drive to LA and then somebody would bail. And I would just sit and cry because I had just spent all that time in the car. So I really tried to focus more on creating interview or scheduling interviews from home. So I got equipment and I record through Skype and call recorder, and I have a mini recorder, and I work with a producer that helps me edit. Unlike a lot of podcasts, I have 3 segments, which is a little bit complicated, but I like to give somebody a couple different elements in each show. But yeah, I schedule most of my interviews for the times where my kids are at school. And, booking can be, the booking is difficult in terms of finding people and getting them to agree to do the show. It's getting a little bit easier as time has gone on. The scheduling can be tricky, but it oddly, the just booking the person is much more difficult than the actual scheduling.
That's funny because a couple of different podcasters have told me the same thing. Like they get something and they're so excited and they booked it, and then they're all ready. Their face is at the mic. They're ready to go, and the person calls and cancels. I know that just reminds me of 90 Day Fiance. Erin Martin was telling me that recently happened to her with Darcy, but you just interviewed Jesse from 90 Day Fiance. Now, I have to know, and this is just totally left turn from what I was trying to ask you, but how was that? Because he seems to be slightly delusional, I guess is the best way to say that.
No, I didn't think so. I didn't think so at all. I found him to be quite gracious. And I think that there is a part of him that has definitely looked at himself on TV and had a little bit of self-awareness. I think that it's complicated. I think I'm a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? I've interviewed over 100 people. That's producers, reality stars, etc. And I think that it's a really bizarre experience to be on TV. I think it's really hard for them to deal with viewer input afterwards. And it's virtually impossible for you to not come out of that experience and not take a little bit to heart. Like, maybe I should change that about myself. And he did. There is a part of him that said, I didn't intend to look that way, but I can see why someone looks at my reaction that way. But, there's more to the story. They're edited down. Their life's edited down to a very, to 20 minutes in each episode, maybe. Probably for him less, because there are 5 different moving stories in each 90 Day Fiance story. But I think that once he explained himself and explained the dynamics of his relationship a little bit more, I thought that he was a little bit easier to understand. You also have to remember that I'm not in a relationship with him, so he can't he wouldn't be able to steamroll me in a way that maybe he is with his girlfriend. So, and I gave him a little bit of a hard time, and he laughed about it. I gave him this absurd quiz because in an episode, he gets really mad at his girlfriend because they go to a pizza place and she folds the pizza, and he says that's not the correct etiquette. And I told him that's the way New Yorkers eat pizza. Yes. So, and then I gave him a hard time because on the show he also gave her a hard time because he lands in the States, and he asked her about all these landmarks, and she doesn't really know any of the specific statistics on the New York metropolitan area. So I gave him a quiz on Amsterdam, where he's from, and he was a good sport about it, and he answered the questions, and he was extremely gracious. And so if you're a gracious guest, that puts you up a couple notches. I've had people that are just horrible garbage people. So I didn't think he was actually that bad.
Okay, so my follow-up question is, who has been a guest that has not been so gracious?
There was a guy who was on The Bachelorette, and he was incredibly obnoxious. He treated me like he was George Clooney, and I a regional publication. He bragged about how, because he had been on the show and he had an MBA, which I would like to know what school he actually got his MBA from. He bragged that, because of being on The Bachelorette, that all of these all of these companies had approached him about running their corporation. I'm like, my husband is the CEO of a software company. You are out of your goddamn mind. No recruiter in this country who watched you on The Bachelorette and thought he's a pool salesman with an MBA. He should run our corporation. So he was just so delusional. The worst part was he was not gracious. He never said thank you. He never promoted the episode. Somebody who is totally unwilling to promote an episode deserves a spot in hell.
My producer and I have been talking about that, going forward with this podcast about promoting and stuff. And, I said, well, if they come on my podcast, I assume they're going to then promote it. And he said, don't assume that.
Yeah, they won't. I mean, I would say 20% of the time my guests promote it. So the onus is really on the podcaster to do all of the work themselves. And it can be a really very frustrating journey. And so, you have to always remind yourself, I do like to do this. This is a joyful experience. And that the people, the fact that they're not promoting or the booking's really difficult or they're not the kind of guests that I thought that I would have. You have to just kind of, work through it and remind yourself about the joy that you have doing the podcast, because people will not help you.
Well, that is terrible. But let me ask you this. I know you had.
But I also think that other podcasters, it's like this really nice community. I believe that if you promote other podcasters, you help grow the market. I know that's not a popular perspective, but I really do believe that. And I feel like I've had some great luck because I've collaborated with so many different podcasters. I think because it's like my background is in PR and marketing. So I know that collaboration is the best way to promote. It really is. So I think that if you are willing to promote other people, you are rewarded handsomely.
Well, I was just saying that you put on your Facebook here in the last day or two, you said, hey, we should all support each other. And you have a big Facebook following, and you put it out there and said, if you have a podcast, post it here so we can all listen. And that's what I'm hopefully getting around to, is that I'm going to be in this podcast community where so far every person I've reached out to, for the most part, has said, sure, I'd love to help you. Let me get back with you in December or something. But, everyone has, for the most part, been sure, let me help you. And
well, the thing is like, the great thing is your podcast is really about highlighting someone's show, which is always fantastic. For some reason, if you get into different genres, people take it personally. If you, like, I don't know, people can be very small-minded about that. Like, well, if that person's in my own space, my own genre, then that's my competition.
So you were saying that some podcasters will get competitive. If you're in their same genre, they feel like, well, if you're going to talk about reality TV and I'm going to talk about reality TV, then we certainly can't talk to each other, because then you're trying to like knock out the competition, I guess, is the idea.
Yeah, it's like, I think of paranoia. Well, if they listen to your show, then they're not going to listen to mine. And I just don't think that's the way that the podcast audience works. I think people are really hungry for content. And let's say you're somebody who consumes podcasts because you have a job which allows you to, I don't know, maybe you do data entry, and then therefore you are, listening to podcasts all day. They're going to listen to more than one. And if somebody only has time to listen to one podcast per week, it's out of your control. Like, I can't control that. If they're only going to listen to one show, I can only put together a great show and promote it. And, at some point it's sort of out of my hands.
Well, do you still, in addition to the podcast, do you still write your recaps? You had that website, Love and Knuckles.
Well, sometimes I kind of have to pick my battles. Like, where's my time? What's worth my time? And it's interesting because I don't write them as much, and then people will write me, well, where's your recap? And I would also say, well, I write them, and then 4 people comment, and they'll say, no, we read it every all the recaps. Do you comment? Do you click like? Well, no. Well, then I have no indication that it's worth my time. So it's like, it became more like I've got all of these things going on and I would rather spend my time putting together my episode, because the episode has so many different elements that it requires a lot of TV watching, and I have to write up notes about a show. It takes a lot of time to find the right guest to recap the right show, to stay on top of who is relevant. Another a thing that people will say is like, I'd love it if you had this person on from like this, XY show about a nail salon in New Jersey. I don't know. And it's like, that would be a small segment, but I can't have that person as a featured guest because they're not going to give me enough downloads. People are not going to be that interested, so I do feel this pressure to have a big guest at the front of every show. And even this week, it was a holiday weekend and I'm like, oh God, I gotta pull this. And sometimes it really works where all of a sudden I'll get a great guest at the last minute, but it's quite a bit of pressure. I
Yeah.
went to on Saturday and there was a reality star that came in, or that was in the restaurant, and the waitress said, so-and-so's over there. And my husband, of course, who knows nothing about reality TV, asked me who it was. And I said, well, they've got a show, and I did pursue them to be a guest at one time. They don't live in Southern California. They live on the other side of the country. And so he said, well, do you want to go over there and talk to them and ask them? And I said, you know what? I don't think I have it in me tonight.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm like, I hit a wall where I'm like, I can't do it. I need to like enjoy my life and have dinner with my husband. And, but I always refer to myself as a one-man band. I'm doing the PR, the marketing, all myself, the booking, and it takes up a lot of time.
Well, that leads to my next question, which is, I get a little panicked when my DVR gets a little bit full, or for example, I was just at the beach and only got to see some shows, and I come home like, oh, I have to catch up on Real Housewives of New York or 90 Day Fiance or whatever show I happen to be watching, and I get a little, nervous because then not only am I behind on the show, then I'm behind on the podcasts that talk about the show. So I'm going to be behind on you or Crappens or Juicy Scoop that's going to talk about it, and I don't want to listen to my podcast till I watch the show. So how do you have time to watch a lot of these shows sort of in real time, because you're going to talk about them that same week? So it's probably very hard for you if you get behind.
It's not as hard as you think. I mean, I don't have the kind of life where I'm going to events and charity balls and stuff. I'm really somebody who is at home quite a bit because I have young kids. So to answer your question, I work out every day. I have never had a cup of coffee in my life because I think the smell is atrocious. So I need a way to stay awake. And for me, working out helps me stay awake. So I work out every day. And while I'm working out, in my garage, I have a bunch of equipment. I have a TV in there and I watch TV shows while I work out. So that's one spot. And I speed watch it. You fast forward through the commercials, and the shows aren't that long when you factor in taking the commercials out. And then I watch shows late, like at night after I put my kids to bed.
And are there any shows that your husband watches with you, or it's like my house and it's like north versus south? One person goes one way, one person goes the other.
Yeah, pretty much. My husband loves tennis. He watches tennis there's tennis on in our house all the time. And he watches war movies and shows about like history or like war history, or he liked Billions, or Ballers. He loves that show Ballers. So we watch different things. He doesn't understand reality TV. He has no interest in it. He doesn't get it at all, which is kind of nice because I don't know. It's kind of nice to have something different. I don't know. It's kind of like my own special thing. I don't know. I don't mind it so much.
He doesn't walk through the room and insult your television like my husband does.
No, but he gets really excited if I laugh at something that he says. It doesn't happen that often, but when it does, he gets a little spring in his step. So if I'm watching The Bachelor or something and he walks through and he makes a comment and I laugh, I think it makes him so happy. And he does say things that are really, really funny. He's got a great sense of humor, but I mean, just to like give you background, my husband owns a software company, works 7 days a week, and just works all the time. So he just doesn't have a lot of time for TV. Even if he did enjoy a show, I just don't see him sitting down with me. I don't know.
Well, my husband's a little bit the same. He will go to his, area and he and my son will watch sports, or if MASH is on, he'll watch that. And I'm just like, I can't with the laugh track on MASH. It drives me crazy. And he likes, Deadliest Catch. Now he says, that's, or Wicked Tuna, or Tuna of the Outer Banks, or I'm like, you're not even a fisherman. Why do you watch all these shows about fishing? But he says those aren't really like reality shows, like the shows I watch that are stupid, and that those are smart shows. And I'm like, well, it's really all the same. It's just following these people's lives,
Right. There's a reality show for every kind of person.
Yeah, you have said before, and I think it's pretty interesting, that you feel like watching these shows is like a sociological experiment,
Yeah.
It's true. You could really learn a lot about people. And on that note, do you think that a lot of people go on these reality shows like we're seeing right now from Gina and OC, and they go on it beforehand saying like, okay, I don't like my husband. I'm going to get divorced. So this is going to launch me like Kelsey Grammer tried to do to Camille. Or do you think that if your marriage is terrible, it's just going to be more terrible if you're going to put it on TV?
I just think that a lot of people are think of the short term. I read this great article by Jack Welch's wife, Susie, many, many years ago, and I believe the way she framed it was you have to think of things in a 5-5-5. Like, how will this affect me 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days, 5 months, 5 years from now? And I think most people think in terms of how will this affect me 5 hours from now, and not 5 days or 5 weeks or 5 months. I think, there's a pursuit for people of a certain age, like maybe you're, 30 years old, and, you're a mom, and, you maybe you had a career before, or maybe you didn't, and you kind of are a little bit bored, and you see people on social media with big followings, and you think, I'd like, a little bit of piece of that. So they, pursue the casting department, or maybe the casting department contacts them because they're friend of a friend. And I think they just think more of the short term, like, well, this will be really a fun experience. I'll get to go and watch what happens live. I'll be on Access Hollywood, and maybe I'll get a couple free clothes. And they sit down with their family and they'll say, it's just going to be fun. I'm just going to do it for a year. And then next thing you know, they're filming, and then they realize this is opening huge wounds in myself and in, problems in my marriage. And maybe there's this aspect of me that they're showing on TV that I didn't realize about myself. And this is quite painful. And then I think other people are like, all right, well, I looked like a shit show the first season. So maybe if I go back another season, I can rehabilitate my image and be, more mindful of the things I say. And then after season 2, they're like, well, I should go a third season, because the third season is when I really get paid some money. So the next thing you know, that's a third season. And then a third season comes and they're like, well, I can't give this up now because I've got this big salary. And if I don't do this, we're dependent on this money now, or maybe I'm a single parent now and I really need it. So I think that's kind of the way it all goes. I think it kind of spins out of control. And then the next thing they know, it's like 3 years in and you're like, well, I'm this TV personality now. And if I'm not on the show, who am I? And will people care about me because my husband doesn't care about me anymore? And the friends that I had before don't like me because I've turned into a different person. So my only real friends are the fans that I have. So I can't get off TV. So I think it's kind of like a crazy train. And you have to be somebody who's really emotionally strong and really grounded to navigate the murky waters of reality TV. It's possible to do it, but I don't think a lot of people have the wherewithal to do it.
Wow, that was great. That's exactly how it goes. I'm thinking about specifically like Carol Radziwill, and of course she's was known before for being a writer. I loved her book What Remains, and I mean she was on Oprah, and she's had quite a life. And then she comes on this show, and I think that she's always sort of been sort of a sleeper character and that she didn't cause too much. She was just sort of there, sort of like Tinsley as like a placeholder. And then here, coming out at the end with this thing with Bethany, she just got over it with the friendship and really sort of not necessarily found her voice. I hate that phrase, but more like showed what she had. Like, look, I don't want to do this anymore. And I'm just going to, speak firmly. And of course it didn't go well. But I think about her, like, when she first was on, she said, yeah, I was talking to Andy at a party and he was saying something about the Countess. And I said, well, I'm really a princess. And he was intrigued. And then he asked me to come on. So, I think about her. I think about her trying to go back to her regular life where she's not on Instagram every 5 minutes in her underwear and stuff. I think it definitely changed her. Now, Bethany has no leg to stand on to talk about people being on Instagram or, whatever. But I do think that that's a good example of somebody that it sort of changed, not necessarily marriage-wise, but as a person.
Well, I also, I think, first of all, I think that these shows are really complicated and the relationships on them. So I think a lot of the arguments that you see on TV are actually based in arguments that happen offline, or they have to do with like appearance fees or salary or things that are tied up to the show that would break the fourth wall. So there's an element of arguments that you don't really understand or don't really get to the bottom of. But I also think that, Bethany, as much as she frustrates people, she's quite smart. I think if you're going to be on a show, you need to be getting something out of it. And she's been able to grow her business exponentially. And that for those women that are on a Housewives and they don't have something outside of just being, a TV personality, that they kind of drill themselves a hole into the ground. So I guess my advice, if somebody is seeking an opportunity on reality television, they really need to map out what the opportunity looks like for them in over a 5-year process. And when these contracts, a lot of them that you sign, it says, I reserve the right to allow a reality TV producer to edit my persona, basically. So if you don't have something that you're promoting, you're basically just setting yourself up to be ripped to shreds. You have to kind of have some control. And I think the pursuit of fame is a drug, and that's a little bit more alluring to people than anything. And so it can be very dangerous.
Yeah, I agree. Yes, I agree. And you see that a lot with all the Instagram models and the YouTube stars, and my kids will tell me, oh, this person's having a beef with this person. It's a Instagram person who does makeup tutorials. And I'm practically 50 years old. I'm like, what are you even talking about? Not that that's any better or any worse.
Instagram's going to be changing. I think that you're going to see a change where it's going to be, people are hungry for less filtered people and lives and more on authenticity. And I think that you'll see that trickle into reality television, where there'll be less interest in people who have perfect filtered lives and more shows about people who live more, who are a little bit more authentic. So I think tides are turning a little bit.
Okay, take a little bit of a turn here. I wanted to talk about something else you do in your podcast, which is when you have a person who's never seen a show review a show, which I think is genius and hilarious. And recently you had Ronnie from Watch What Crappens On to review 90 Day Fiance, which between you and Aaron Martin is the reason I started watching 90 Day Fiance. And oh my gosh, I mean, it was sitting on my DVR for 2 days. I couldn't get to it till last night, and people were coming in the room. I'm like, shh, this is important. But when Ronnie came in to talk about it, I was like, I know he has to watch for his job so many shows. I was like, but I hope you've made him a convert, because that was pure comedy gold. I mean, that was hilarious listening to you two talk about that.
Yeah, today I'm doing an episode where I'm having Danny Pellegrino watch it.
Oh, that'll be great.
Yeah, I love doing that.
How do you pick the people to review these random shows?
I don't know. I kind of get them here or there, recommendations for people, but I have, it has to be somebody who has the right kind of, I try to get people that are funny and open, and sometimes it's a real, if I get somebody who's a snooze, I just don't even use it.
Oh,
And I have to be honest with somebody, like it's just not, it doesn't fit with the style of the show.
yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. I don't know. I wish I had an easy answer for that. It's really hard. I just try. I'm just trying to make it work week to week. I don't know. I can't. And plus, the theme of my show is so timely. I can't really go too far into the future in my booking, and
Right.
that's for a guest or for a featured guest.
Okay, now I'm going to give you some rapid fire questions. What was the first reality show you ever watched?
I'm not sure the first one I watched, but I think the first one that I thought I can't get enough of this was the first season of The Real World.
Same. I was talking to Aaron Martin about that, and I was like, Andre and Norm and Becky and Kevin, and then we couldn't remember Julie and then Heather B. And I think it was Becky that we couldn't remember. She was sort of like the
It's like a hippie.
yeah, like kind of bohemian, what we would call now a hipster, I guess. Okay, and so what do you think, in your opinion, is the worst reality show ever made?
Who Wants to Marry a Millionaire? Probably. That was pretty gross.
Did you have that girl on your show, Dana Conger?
Darva Conger? No.
Darva.
Mm-mm.
Oh my gosh, wouldn't that be a dream guest? So what do you think is the best reality show ever made?
I change my opinion kind of all the time, but my favorites are, I love the Joe Schmo show. I loved My Big Fat Obnoxious Fiance. I love, obviously, The Real World. The early seasons are my favorites. I just watched Born This Way. I think that's really great television. I don't know, there's so many. It kind of changes all the time.
And if you had to be on a reality show, which one would you be on, if you could choose?
It would be my own show.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, I think that would be a pretty good one because your life is pretty exciting, it seems. Now, tell me, this is what we're doing at the end of every podcast. I'm asking the podcasters what podcast they listen to give my listeners maybe a new suggestion.
One of the podcasts that I really like to listen to is How to Be Amazing with Michael Ian Black. And he does great interviews with people about their careers and how they're really great at what they do. So I love that one. I'm a big fan of Lance Armstrong's podcast, The Forward. And I recommend the interview he did with Chris Evert and the one he did with Rahm Emanuel. They were two of my favorites.
Okay, I'm writing all this down. It always surprises me what people listen to because, you would think people would go with the usuals. But this has been such a learning experience. I've learned about so many new podcasts.
I do listen to a lot of political ones too, but I try not to talk about politics on my show or in my group. Although that's a part of my life. That's a big part of my life is my love for politics.
You worked here in D.C., right?
Yeah, I'm like a political news junkie, but I don't know. I kind of feel like my show is an escape for people.
Yeah, well, sometimes, what's happening in our politics is like a reality show. It's
for sure.
pretty entertaining. So we're going to wind down on that note, but tell me not tell me because I know where, but tell my listeners where they can find you on all the platforms and your website and all your funny Instagram things and all that stuff.
Sure. My website is loveandknuckles.com. You can find my podcast, Reality Life with Kate Casey, wherever you find podcasts, Stitcher, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. My Twitter is @KateCasey, and I am always on Twitter talking about reality shows, looking for guest suggestions, etc. My Facebook group is Reality Life with Kate Casey, and it's a ton of really smart, oddly kind people who like to deep dive reality shows. And my Instagram is @KateCaseyCA, and that's a place where I like to do celebrity impersonations, their outfits, and it's kind of like a peek into my life.
Yes, and your beautiful family. Your children are just so cute.
I feel like, and sometimes in podcast interviews, I'm like, I wonder if people expect me to be like, funnier, but when I go talk about reality TV, sometimes I get very cerebral.
But that's why we like you. We like your dry wit and your ability to make some shows that are crazy seem like you've said, it's more of like a study of human behavior, I guess, right?
I do. I think the thing that I always tell my children is the most important thing for me to teach them and for them to value is to be curious about people, and to ask lots of questions. And I feel like the more you ask questions of people, the more you learn about them. And so I love a reality television show because it peels back the layers of someone's life. And the more you learn about them, the more you understand yourself and about someone outside of, your inner circle. And it helps shape your perspective of the world around you.
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been really cool, Kate. I appreciate you so much for
Thank
being
you.
encouraging about my podcast and also appearing as a guest in my first season of my podcast.
Awesome. Congrats.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Ads not read by me, Mary Payne, don't necessarily reflect the views of Pink Shade. If you'd like to listen to ad-free, you're going to go on over to Supercast or Patreon, and you can find the links to Pink Shade Prime at pinkshadepodcast.com.